Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. The United States has unilaterally declared re-imposition of United Nations sanctions on Iran. In a statement, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Washington will hold accountable all United Nations members who do not implement the curbs. Iran has asked the world body to block the U.S. sanctions, calling Washington's actions null and void. In a letter to the UN Security Council, Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he cannot take any action against U.S. decision because of uncertainty. Afghanistan's President Ashraf Ghani has asked the Taliban to declare a humanitarian ceasefire amid peace talks in Doha. In a statement issued by the presidential palace, the Afghan president said a lasting ceasefire is essential to ensure security of Afghan civilians. Five civilians have been wounded after missiles hit Saudi Arabia's Jizan region. Saudi state media says 3 cars were also damaged in the attack. The Houthi rebels have not yet claimed responsibility for the attack. United States President Donald Trump has approved the deal between Oracle Corporation and China's video sharing app TikTok. Talking to reporters, Trump said Oracle and Walmart will have total control over the company's operations in the United States. The president said TikTok Global will likely be headquartered in Texas, creating at least 25,000 direct jobs. In India, more than 1,100 people have died and over 92,000 have contracted COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. The country's death toll has crossed 86,000 with more than 5.4 million confirmed cases. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, the death rate continues to decline as one person died of the virus overnight, with the tally standing at 6,416. The novel coronavirus has claimed over 955,000 lives across the globe and has infected over 30.6 million so far. News coming in detail after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now on the news in detail. The United States has declared re-imposition of UN sanctions on Iran. This comes after the Trump administration failed to extend the conventional weapons embargo set to expire next month under the Iran nuclear deal.
In a statement, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Washington will hold accountable all UN members who don't implement the curbs. He said sanctions include the ban on engaging in enrichment and reprocessing related activities and ballistic missile development and testing. The transfer of nuclear and missile-related technologies to Iran is also among the new curbs. Speaking on state television, Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said there was no mechanism for the U.S. to reinforce its controversial snapback. He warned that other countries would be subjected to the same treatment if they did not resist America's move. In a tweet, Iran's UN envoy asked the world body to block the U.S. sanctions, calling Washington's actions null and void. In a letter to the UN Security Council, Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he cannot take any action on U.S. decision because of uncertainty. 13 of the 15 Security Council members say Washington's move is void. They said Pompeo used a mechanism agreed under a 2015 nuclear deal between Iran and world powers, which the U.S. quit in 2018. Earlier, UK, France, and Germany told the Security Council that they won't implement the sanctions announced by the U.S.
Now, for more on this, we have with us political analyst Mustafa Khoshchesm from Tehran. Thank you for your time. Now, why do you think Washington is pressing for sanctions on Iran if it is in compliance with the JCPOA?
Well, the United States knows pretty well that its claimed trigger mechanism is not working and it's been isolated. But they intend to, first of all, escalate tensions with Iran. You know that despite the very fact that the UN Security Council chairman has ruled out any kind of action to reimpose UN Security Council sanctions against Iran, the U.S. has declared that it would go for unilateral sanctions against Iran. First of all, to block any kind of arms trade with Iran as promised under the JCPOA. And secondly, to reimpose inspection of ship vessels and air cargoes to and from Iran. This would definitely be responded with Iran's tough response. And as stated by the top commander of IRGC of Iran yesterday, Tehran would not tolerate any kind of hostile action like that.
Right, Mr. Mustafa, now, is Tehran satisfied with the position taken by the United Nations over the issue, or does it fall short?
Well, first of all, Tehran should be satisfied with unanimous backup it's receiving from the UN Security Council members, as well as the UN Security Council. But it's not enough, of course, because the U.S. is standing up to the whole world. It's humiliating the whole world and also making a mockery of the UN Security Council mechanism. It's violating the Resolution 2231 that is supporting the JCPOA. It's standing against the wishes of other member states, and therefore it's violating the rules and regulations on the basis of the JCPOA. And as the other parties have also stressed, the sanctions on arms trade with Iran should be removed in less than a month from now.
Right, and Mr. Mustafa, do you believe the EU3 and other countries will stand by their pledge of not implementing the United States' proposed sanctions, or will they cave into the United States' threats?
Well, as a matter of fact, the EU3 have always proved that when it comes to political positions and words and verbal therapy, actually, they stand behind the nuclear deal in order to encourage Iran to stay under the nuclear deal, since it provides them with the best possible regime of inspections to make sure what's going on in Iran. But they are receiving merits without reciprocating it, without giving Tehran any merits. They promised to make up for the U.S. withdrawal from the JCPOA, and they promised again and again that they would comply with their undertakings under the JCPOA when the U.S. discarded the deal over 2 years ago, but they have not taken any action, zilch, nothing at all. And in this time, we do not believe that the Europeans would go for any kind of arms deal with Iran, but these are the Chinese and the Russians that should show their support in action and go for a deal in reality under the underground after October the 18th, 7 days from now.
Absolutely. Mustafa Khoshchesm, political analyst from Tehran, thank you very much for your time. And now, viewers, it's time for a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Now, moving on with the news stories. Afghanistan's President Ashraf Ghani has asked the Taliban to declare a humanitarian ceasefire amid peace talks in Doha. In a statement issued by the presidential palace, the Afghan president said a lasting ceasefire is essential to ensure the security of Afghan civilians. He also condemned yesterday's fatal attack on the deputy head of Paktia Provincial Council in Gardea city. Earlier, Kabul said its airstrikes killed more than 30 Taliban in northern Kunduz province. The Afghan Defense Ministry said an investigation is underway into the incident. A Kunduz official said the first strike hit the Taliban base, but the second one caused civilian casualties. However, the Taliban disputed the claim, saying the raids killed 23 civilians instead. Meanwhile, veteran Afghan fighter and head of the Hizb-e-Islami party Gulbuddin Hekmatyar has expressed willingness to form an alliance with the Taliban. Speaking in Kabul, Hekmatyar said his party is ready for direct talks with the Taliban for partnership and cooperation. He said if the two groups join hands, the crisis in Afghanistan will end soon and no force will be able to stand against it. Hekmatyar added his party will be looking forward to the talks once the first round of negotiations between Kabul and the Taliban are completed. He said the Afghan government is weak, while the Taliban and Hizb-e-Islami share mutual values. Hekmatyar also said India is dissatisfied with the peace push and has started backing militias to act as spoilers. Moving on, 5 civilians have been wounded after missiles hit Saudi Arabia's Jizan region. Saudi state media says 3 cars were also damaged in the attack on the border village in Al Harth Governorate. The media quoted Jizan civil defense spokesperson Colonel Muhammad Yahya Al-Ghamdi as saying missiles targeted civilians protected under international humanitarian law. Ghamdi accused Houthis of the attack, but they have yet not claimed the responsibility. Now, the Pakistan Army says its 2 soldiers have been martyred during an exchange of fire with terrorists in a town of Miran Shah in North Waziristan. In a statement, the military's media wing said security forces were conducting an intelligence-based operation in the area of Spalga. It said the security forces have cordoned off the area for a clearance operation. Earlier, the army killed 4 terrorists in an operation in the Avaran district of southwestern Balochistan. The ISPR said security forces also recovered a large cache of arms, ammunition and other equipment. This comes a week after the army killed a terrorist commander, Ihsanullah, near the inter-district boundary of North and South Waziristan. Now, the Organization of Islamic Countries has called for a UN probe into the extrajudicial killings by Indian forces in occupied Kashmir. This comes as the Indian Army admitted its troops killed 3 youths in a gun battle in the Shopian district in July. In a tweet, the OIC's Human Rights Commission said Indian troops are committing gross human rights violations in the occupied valley. Earlier, Pakistan demanded a judicial inquiry under international scrutiny into the extrajudicial killings of Kashmiri civilians. In a statement, the Foreign Office said the BJP leadership is directly responsible for crimes against the Kashmiri people. It said Indian troops have killed over 300 Kashmiris in fake encounters and so-called search and cordon operations in a year. Now, the number of COVID-19 deaths continues to steeply decline in Pakistan as 1 person lost his life to the virus in the last 24 hours. The Health Ministry said 640 people have tested positive for the virus overnight. It said the number of active cases in the country stands at 6,952. The ministry said so far over 292,000 people have recovered from the disease. It said 837 people are admitted in the hospitals, out of which 106 are on ventilators. Meanwhile, in India, more than 1,100 people have died and over 92,000 have contracted COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. The country's death toll has crossed 86,000 with more than 5.4 million confirmed cases. Brazil has reported 739 deaths and over 33,000 coronavirus cases overnight. Mexico has registered 455 new fatalities and over 5,100 cases in a single day. The novel coronavirus has claimed over 955,000 lives across the globe and has infected over 30.6 million so far. Now, United States President Donald Trump has approved the deal between Oracle Corporation and China's video sharing app TikTok. Talking to reporters, Trump said Oracle and Walmart will have total control over the company's operations in the United States. The Commerce Department said for the deal to be completed, it will delay earlier download ban order by a week. Trump said TikTok Global will likely have its headquarters in Texas, creating at least 25,000 direct jobs.
So everybody will be happy. It's a severance. It'll continue to be named TikTok as it was all along, and that's it. That's it. So I can say that I have given the deal my blessing. If they get it done, that's great. If they don't, that's okay too. But it's a great deal for America, and very interesting.
Well, Walmart says it will take a 7.5% stake in TikTok Global, while Oracle will have 12.5%. Now moving on to Venezuela, which has rejected a UN report on alleged human rights violations and the country calling it war propaganda. In a press briefing, Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jose Arriaza said the 444-page report is an absolute fraud. Arriaza said it was irresponsible of the UN representatives to not consult the authorities during their investigation. The report alleges Venezuela's socialist government committed systematic human rights violations. The investigators based the claims on over 270 interviews with victims, witnesses, former officials and confidential documents. Arriaza said the release of the report amid U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's regional visit was meant to tarnish Venezuela's reputation.
The report is absolutely a fraud. It is a monument to war propaganda. That is exactly what this report is seeking, a moral death, the death of a reputation, and they are not going to do it. Look at how it all fits. They do this in the middle of Mike Pompeo's tour of neighboring countries of Venezuela, a tour of intimidation.
Well, Pompeo is currently on a four-nation South America tour to pressure Maduro into resigning amid economic sanctions and UN's narco-terrorism charges. Now moving on to Russia, where supporters of Khabarovsk region's detained governor have continued to put pressure on Kremlin demanding a fair trial. This comes a day after a Moscow court rejected a custody appeal by former governor Sergei Furgal. Furgal was arrested on the 9th of July in connection with the murder charges, which he denies. His arrest has triggered weeks of street protests in the region. His supporters say the detention is politically motivated. President Vladimir Putin has named a new acting governor, but protesters say he has no connection with the region and have called on him to step down. Moving on, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says people who break new self-isolation rules after contacting COVID-19 will face a fine up to $13,000. The new law will be effective from September 28th in England, and government officials are in talks to expand it to Scotland, Wales and the Northern Ireland. It said staying at home for at least 10 days after noticing COVID-19 symptoms will be necessary. But despite threats of these heavy fines, more than 1,000 people gathered in central London to protest government-imposed COVID-19 restrictions. Earlier, Johnson said Britain is seeing a second wave of the coronavirus after the same was experienced in France and Spain. Meanwhile, nearly 9,000 asylum seekers have moved into a new temporary facility on the Greek island of Lesbos. The new settlement has been established after a fire destroyed the Moria camp. Greek authorities say the new camp has been set up at Karatepe near the port of Mytilene. They said those entering the camp are being tested for the coronavirus. The authorities say they have so far placed 214 of the migrants in quarantine after positive tests. Displacing 12,000 people to Moria fire left refugees without shelter, sanitation and access to food. Authorities believe the fire was started by the migrants after a dispute over quarantine measures at the facility. Still in Greece, a medical center and main roads have collapsed in the Karditsa region after Storm Lanos caused a river to overflow its banks. Cyclone Lanos uprooted trees and caused power cuts on the Ionian Islands and the western Peloponnese. It swept through central Greece, hitting areas in and around the cities of Karditsa and Pharsala. Authorities say 2 people have died while a search is underway for 2 others who have been reported missing. They say the electricity grid is struggling to cope and efforts are being made to restore the power. The Coast Guard says 5 vessels sank off the Zakynthos and Lefkada. And now let's have a look at the weather updates across the globe. Well, viewers, with the weather update, we come to the end of this bulletin. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News. Take care.